I know where I need to go, but can you help me understand what I'll be dealing with when I get back to my reality? I need to see things related to me, things going on in my world, so I know how to help Matthew. Instantly, you find yourself out of body and hovering unseen in front of Thomas. For a moment, it seems that Thomas is looking directly at you, but then his attention turns to 5 men seated at a long, highly polished cherrywood table. He picks up a remote control and a large screen lights up with video images of burning rainforests.
Images like these capture people's attention, but the real problem is a lot less visible and far more serious. At least 30,000 species vanish every year. Right now, we're living in the middle of one of the greatest mass extinctions in Earth's history. Our planetary ecosystem is collapsing. Environmental toxins are bringing about new patterns of disease. And pollinating insects are on their way to extinction, leading to widespread crop failure. This ongoing loss of biodiversity may have consequences we'll never think of until it's too late. First, we're going to focus on one aspect of this collapse. Albert Einstein said, "If the honeybee disappears from the surface of the earth, man would have no more than 4 years to live." Bee colonies are disappearing at an alarming rate. Earth would instantly begin to thrive again without the human race. But we cannot live without pollinating insects. In the past 5 years, we have lost 30% of the honeybee population, and there is no doubt that in a matter of years, all of the bees will die. And then the entire human race will die within 4 years. The paradox is that if a large portion of the human race were to die off first, not only would it save pollinating insects, our entire planet would quickly begin to recover. We know the problem, we know the solution, but no one is doing anything about it. So who's to blame? The corporations, the chemical industry, the government, the farmers, the consumers? The truth is, it doesn't matter, says Thomas emphatically. No one is taking responsibility, not even the Brotherhood. And by the time everyone starts to wake up and see what's really happening, it will be too late. For years we've been working to subtly reduce the population by degrading human health with specific chemicals added to food, air, and water, and pharmaceutical drugs. But we're out of time. We need to be prepared to drastically reduce the population if we're going to stop the collapse of our ecosystem. If the bees die, everything will be lost. No government will legally be able to take these steps. It's up to us. Are we in agreement? The men all nod gravely. There are 2 methods we will be employing: activating natural disasters and manipulating human consciousness. Nodding toward a man with black curly hair and a neatly trimmed beard, Thomas says, "Carlos will explain the latter." Standing up, Carlos says, "Our research has shown that the power of the human mind can be directed and manipulated to create strong beliefs, even convictions, as well as diseased conditions that lead to death with nothing more than fearful thoughts." A split-screen video springs to life, showing you and Matthew as you react emotionally to the newscast you had watched only days earlier. The video you're seeing is nothing more than a combination of past newsreels showing natural disasters and movie clips that were edited out of recent disaster films. We then created a narrative and added timestamps. Though none of it was actually happening, These teenagers fully believed what we told them to believe. They both accepted their fate and unquestioningly cooperated with everything we asked of them.
Though you are out of body, you are dizzy with shock. How can this be? Why would anyone do something so appalling and cruel?
The intention of our experiment with these teens was to isolate them and give them totally inaccurate but convincing visual and audio information, then observe the level at which they could be controlled. Even though the female is particularly intuitive, psychic even, we've had complete cooperation, and they've both become passive even in areas where they're required to submit to activities they wouldn't ordinarily do.
A man in his mid-30s with short-cropped brown hair interjects.
So, what are you suggesting, Thomas? False flags or some form of mass hypnosis via the media? That's what you and the others are here to discover,
says Thomas.
In the lab, we have thousands of case files. We maintain complete control of the stock market, so you have an unlimited budget. You can acquire whatever you need.
Motioning to a grey-haired man who seems to be the oldest in the group, Thomas says,
Maxime will now explain our natural disaster program.
Standing up and walking over to a large map, Maxime says,
One of the fastest ways to covertly reduce the population is by triggering natural disasters. We started this process quite some time ago by triggering seismic and volcanic activity using Tesla technology in this area.
Pointing to a map of the Pacific Ocean, he says,
The Ring of Fire has been created by oceanic tectonic plates getting stuck on continental plates. Volcanoes erupt in this region when the oceanic plates slide deep beneath the continental ones. Eventually, the temperature and pressure become so extreme the rock above them melts. This volatile area runs from New Zealand up through Indonesia and Japan, across the ocean to Alaska, and down the west coast of the Americas to Chile. Japan, Indonesia, Alaska, and Chile have already experienced earthquakes at magnitude 9 and above. Our plan is to activate a fault line which is part of the Ring of Fire but has been completely ignored.
Maxime then points to a map of California.
Just north of the San Andreas fault line lies another fault line known mainly to the geological community as the Cascadia Subduction Zone. It begins here, near Cape Mendocino, and runs for several hundred miles off the coast of the Pacific Northwest, along Oregon and Washington, terminating here,
says Maxime, picking up a small mechanical device and holding it out in the palm of his hand.
This device generates a frequency that resonates at Earth's frequency. The concept is much like a high-pitched sound resonating with the frequency of a crystal glass. At first, the glass will hum, but when the amplitude is high enough to exceed the strength of the glass, in other words, the sound becomes too loud for the glass to vibrate, the crystal shatters. Waves of any sort set up sympathetic vibrations in the materials they impinge upon, and devices like this one have been planted along the Cascadia Subduction Zone and the San Andreas Fault. When the time is optimal, we will activate the devices, and a massive earthquake extending over 1,600 miles will take place on the San Andreas Fault and the Cascadian Subduction Zone simultaneously. One end will hit the entire northern coastline and trigger a tsunami of epic proportions. But it won't be like a wave rising up from the surface of the sea and breaking from above. The entire ocean will be elevated at least 100 feet as it overtakes the land. Activating the San Andreas Fault would damage half the buildings in Los Angeles and destroy the city's water supply. But as you know, the 1906 earthquake is not what devastated San Francisco. It was the ruptured gas mains that started fires, which ultimately burned the city to the ground. With this in mind, we're planning to create the perfect storm, which is to say that we will activate the Tesla devices to coincide with gusting winds.
The picture before you changes, and Maxime says,
"This map of the Santa Ana winds in SoCal is constantly being updated. Yellow is marginal risk, orange is moderate, red is high, and purple is extreme. As you can see, the map currently indicates red from Santa Barbara all the way down the coast to San Diego. But the prediction over the next few days turns into purple. And this is what we've been waiting for. Extreme, hot, gusting winds, which will cause fires to burn intensely and move at phenomenal speeds. A series of 9-point earthquakes, combined with the resulting tsunami to the north and fires to the south, will cut back substantially on the population in this area. The entire coastline will remain all but uninhabitable for several years, with no electricity, drinking water, sewer services, healthcare facilities, and major highways. Interstate 10 will be torn apart, making it impossible to receive supplies from the south. This will cut back substantially on the human population while allowing our honeybee population to thrive. Even though this area has some of the richest soil for farming, no one will be focused on planting and poisoning crops when they have no electricity, sanitation, roads, hospitals, or homes,"
says Maxime as he returns to his seat.
An additional part of our plan is to activate the Wasatch Fault here in Utah,
says Thomas, pointing to the map.
This fault line is long overdue for an earthquake, which means that it will be activated with only the slightest provocation. Not only would this cripple the Wasatch Front urban area with over 2 million people, but as you can see, these east-west interstate highways 80 and 70, plus I-15 running north and south, will be destroyed at these points,
he says, pointing to Salt Lake City and highway connection points both north and south.
These 3 highways are surrounded by mountains, so when they are crippled, it will be extremely difficult for disaster supplies to reach Utah, Nevada, and California, and most transportation will come to an immediate halt.
A gray-haired man raises his hand and says,
"Isn't the southern portion of the Wasatch Fault dangerously close to our location?" "It's close, but we won't activate any devices south of the I-15, I-70 convergence," says Thomas. "But you said an earthquake is long overdue. Couldn't the earthquake affect us here?"
says the man, narrowing his eyes.
"It's very unlikely given how deep we are underground, and the fact that our facility is composed of man-made caverns and tunnels built into the bedrock," says Thomas. "But to be on the safe side, I've created a map for each of you, so you can be sure you're out of harm's way." "Wouldn't it be best if we just took a train to one of the other bases where it's safe?" says the man. "Well, there have been some unexpected developments, so let me explain," says Thomas. "As you know, our military has been trying to reach the inner Earth ever since Admiral Richard Byrd actually flew inside through the North Pole in 1947, returning with a full report. There are untold amounts of gold, diamonds, and other important elements that we want to control. And though we immediately became a presence at the North Pole and in Antarctica back in 47, we've never been able to penetrate the inner Earth defenses. Their technology is light years ahead of ours. However, our remote viewers discovered a back door, an underground cavern that opens into a series of tunnels that lead into the inner earth. It's completely unguarded. In fact, I've sent a test subject to the cavern via the Montauk chair. Our best remote viewers have been tracking her movements, and she has successfully reached the inner earth in a remarkably short period of time, says Thomas with a restrained smile, but it's clear to you that he is extremely pleased with himself. Though we will continue to do our best to reduce Earth's population and save pollinating insects, regardless of what happens, our brotherhood will not be forced to live underground if Earth is ultimately destroyed. My alternate plan will allow the 6 of us to live inside the inner Earth. It's a utopian world where everyone is in perfect health. They live for hundreds or even thousands of years. They've managed to stop our military, but I'm now confident we can make it through.
You are fuming. He wasn't just testing you. He has been using you without your knowledge or permission. Adding insult to injury, he didn't even give your name or any credit whatsoever. He called you a test subject, as if he deserved all the credit for picking you and you had done nothing. If you hadn't been viewing him out of body, you would have hit him over the head with his coffee cup, and the prison time would have been totally worth it. But all you can do is stare at the cup, willing it to fly off the table and hit him in the head. Yet as you stare at the stubbornly unmoving cup, you realize you're looking at an emblem of the flat Earth. It looks exactly like the map on your compass, with the North Pole at the center. You can't believe your eyes. You move closer and see that it's the flag of the United Nations. You don't know what to think. You had seen the United Nations emblem before, but nothing registered at the time. Could the design be a coincidence? Or is it an inside joke shared by the elite few who know Earth is a flat playing field, and who laugh at all the rest who believe it's actually a sphere? Thomas continues,
though the Tesla device is being utilized to activate earthquakes, the resonant frequency can also be moderated, allowing us to tunnel through virtually anything. We're very close to breaching the cavern that leads into the inner Earth. But just recently, we hit an igneous layer that required us to intensify the frequency of the Tesla device, which in turn set off an earthquake. This has happened before, but in the past, the tremors have been insignificant and fairly brief. However, this time, though the movement is barely noticeable at this level, miles below us, there is a great deal of movement, and it appears to be increasing. We're pressing on and doing everything we can to reach the cavern, but our instruments have indicated a fast buildup of magma underground, and it would appear we have awakened an ancient supervolcano. It's impossible to know if or when it will erupt, but this type of buildup occurring at this rate of speed generally precedes a massive eruption. If this happens, there will be an emergency evacuation of this facility. This evacuation is not to protect those leaving, but to be sure that everyone left in this facility can easily survive, even for generations. So all of you need to stay here. You'll be far safer underground whether or not the tunnel is finished. Once again, says the grey-haired man, interrupting, wouldn't it be safest to evacuate by train and then return when we're sure it's safe? If the supervolcano erupts, there will be no escape anywhere on Earth, says Thomas ruefully. Even if you were able to take the train to another base and try to get home from there, this type of eruption would cause a 10-foot layer of ash that would spread up to 1,000 miles away. And when the ash plume rises up and reaches the stratosphere, It releases sulfuric gases that, when mixed with Earth's water vapor, would cause all air transportation to cease, and a volcanic winter would ensue as ash in our atmosphere spreads around the world. We would be facing a small ice age with very few, if any, survivors. But doesn't this mean it's even more dangerous to activate the Wasatch Fault, given how close we are?
Says the man emphatically. With a conciliatory sigh, Thomas says,
I admit there is a small possibility that the earthquake could activate volcanic activity, but given the tunnel work below, that may be the result regardless of whether we activate the fault line or not. And if we want to make it extremely difficult for the West Coast to survive and rebuild, it's more important that we do everything we can to stop transportation from reaching as many cities as possible. My plan is to finish the tunnel to the inner Earth and continue working on everything we've discussed. When we've implemented our strategies and we know the population will be sufficiently decreased, then our job will be complete, and you are all welcome to journey with me to the inner Earth. In case of an unforeseen emergency, you'll find your gear is already packed and waiting in your rooms for those who would care to trek to the inner Earth, says Thomas as he hands each man a small metallic device. These devices will give you access to any place in this facility, and also the GPS coordinates that will lead you to the safest possible location, either in this facility or leading you to the inner Earth tunnel when it's finished.
Suddenly, you feel a strange pulling motion, and in the next moment you are back in your body at the portal. You are horrified by the cold, calculating methods Thomas is planning to implement, and even more shocked by the fact that you and Matthew were actually being shown video clips of what could very well take place within days. And now that you know it's actually coming, you have no way to stop it. This is terrible. What am I supposed to do? You ask desperately. The portal responds, life is but a dream. Before you can respond, you suddenly feel utterly exhausted, as if all of the energy has been drained from your body and is being replaced by a light, tingling feeling. You are falling asleep, but it is happening so quickly you can't even force your eyes to open. And then you find yourself standing in a very ordinary-looking room with a highly set square window, a red exterior door, 4 white walls, and a square wooden table with 4 wooden chairs set neatly around it. But this is unlike any dream you've ever dreamed before, because you are fully aware that you are dreaming, and that your body is actually lying in a lounge chair at the portal. You look at the table. You know for a fact that the table isn't solid and it isn't real. With this in mind, you walk up to it and knock on the surface. The table behaves just as any table would. It feels solid to the touch, makes the appropriate sound given the size of the room and the height of the ceiling, and it even has color and texture and the faint scent of pine. Yet you know for a fact that it isn't there. You know your mind has created everything, down to the smallest detail, even details that never would have occurred to you. You decide to go outside, and without even needing to open the door, you find yourself instantly standing in the yard, smelling freshly cut grass, and astonished to see a perfectly clear blue sky overhead. You think, since I know I'm dreaming, I might as well fly. In an instant, you are high in the sky, lighter than air, laughing out loud from the thrill of it all. You decide you should go home and check on your parents, and immediately begin flying toward home. But then you realize you are in the inner Earth and have no idea how to find your way. Immediately you're back on the ground, and no matter what you do, you can't get yourself to fly again. You guess that it's your fear that has grounded you. But even when you decide you don't need to be afraid, you simply can't get your body to fly again, as if your fear has somehow anchored you to the ground. When you wake up, you have complete awareness of your dream. It is as clear and real to you as if it had just happened in your own reality, only everything has happened in a split second. You see, says the portal, as I told you, your dreams are far closer to actual reality than the world you believe is solid and real. When you awaken from your dreams, you are in a highly believable hologram projected by your avatar. In the game program, nothing is as it seems. Look, I don't know how to get this through to you, you say, exasperated. I'm talking about real problems, not some hologram, not a game. We have real problems on Earth, but you can't understand that because, well, you're a library or something like that. You wish you had taken a class on how to communicate with artificial intelligence. My intelligence is not artificial. I am connected to the universal intelligence of all that is, says the portal. Okay, all right, whatever, you say, sighing and not wanting to offend the portal. Clearly it wasn't programmed to know the truth of its existence. I get that you're trying to show me that even when I know for a fact that something isn't really there, like that table in my dream, that the illusion of a table is still going to act like a table. And I understand that you're trying to tell me that nothing is really real in my world. Everything is a hologram projected by my avatar. You pause as you try to put everything together. And even if I know that what I see isn't really there, it's still going to act as if it's real, right? Yes, says the portal. Well, that's just confusing. Can't you just give me a for dummies version? Something that will really help me when I get back, you say, praying the portal is actually programmed for such a thing. Yes, I can. Imagine a mirror hanging on a wall. It is neutral. It is not good or bad. It's just a mirror. Now, when you stand in front of the mirror, you're no longer perceiving it as neutral. In fact, if you think about it, you no longer see the mirror. You only see yourself. But even then, you aren't actually seeing yourself, at least not in a neutral way, the way you originally saw the mirror as it was hanging on the wall. You're seeing your perception of yourself. Do you understand? I think so, you say hesitantly. The game program itself is neutral. Just like the mirror on the wall, it mirrors back whatever you are thinking and feeling. There are countless reasons why you perceive yourself the way you do, and every reason is connected to something you've experienced before, either in the game you're currently playing or in games you've played prior to this one. We'll call these perceptions imprints. Some imprints you're consciously aware of, but most imprints come to you unconsciously. Yet, they are still imprinted in your avatar mind, whether you remember them or not. And these imprints determine your experience. You mean I'm attracting certain people or experiences because of these imprints? You say, confused. You do not attract anything. You are creating everything. Your focus creates an imprint. The imprint is projected by your avatar and shows up as your holographic world. But how does that help me? you say impatiently. Do I have to learn how to fight off an imprint? No, you can't fight or destroy an imprint, but you can create new imprints that are more powerful than the old imprints. How? You say abruptly. The reason things don't appear differently according to your desire is because your fear that what you want won't happen is stronger than your desire for what you want. You can have anything you can imagine if you can wish without worrying, says the portal. Wish without worrying. You've never contemplated whether or not your wishes included worrying. But now that you think about it, you do have a tendency to worry when you really have your heart set on something. As you contemplate what you might wish for that wouldn't cause you to worry, you can't think of anything. So you decide to wish for whatever you want and worry about the worrying part later. You take a deep breath and say, I want to help Matthew escape so we can go home and help our families too. And well, I guess I want to save everyone on the planet from what's coming. Whether it's Thomas's plan of destruction, or the extinction of bees and everyone dying 4 years later, or whatever the next catastrophe may be. And, well, I know how to save the earth. I remember being a Vedras. I wish people would listen to me and that people could live that way again. I mean, if they want to. Okay, that wish went on a bit, you concede, and it's not very realistic. Being realistic is highly overrated. You wouldn't have the desire to do all of those things if there was nothing you could do about it, says the portal. Okay, but here's the thing, you confess. I'm not very good at wishing without worrying. That's okay. There's a solution. Think of someone else who wants what you want, and then help them get it. I don't know anyone crazy enough to think they can save the earth and all of humanity. I think I was just on a bit of a roll thinking it was just a wish, you add sheepishly. But even if I could find someone like me who had the mother of all wishes, how could I possibly help them when I don't know what to do myself? Remember that wish without worrying part? Laughing, you say, Oh, yeah. So don't worry. There will be someone you can help. And it doesn't matter whether you accomplish what you set out to do or not. You are simply creating an imprint. And 90% of the imprint is your intention to help someone else. Okay, you say, hoping there will be something more substantial that you can do. Think of anything good you're doing to help others, and that will take all of the worry out of it. That's it? Yes. Oh. You take a deep breath. Growing up, people your mother's age used to always say to you, Oh, you're such a little Pollyanna. You had to look it up in the dictionary to find out what it meant. Actually, there were two words. Pollyannaism was excessively or blindly optimistic, whereas Pollyanna-ish was unreasonably or illogically optimistic. You never were completely sure whether you were an ism or an ish, but either way, you outgrew that phase when your best friend died in 6th grade. After that, you didn't see life quite the same way anymore. If the portal was right, and the answer to getting whatever you want was by helping someone else get what they want first, why hadn't anyone ever mentioned that before? It was so simple it couldn't be a total secret. But then it occurs to you that maybe Pollyannaism had been programmed into the portal, or that the library needed some serious updating when it comes to the reality of human existence. At least from where you come from. So you focus on your real reason for being at the portal in the first place. Can you deliver me to the military base where I came from? The secret underground base in the Utah desert? You say, figuring there couldn't be more than one. Oh, and I want to be inside the base. And then you think about the size of the base and add, and in a spot where I can easily reach Matthew. Yes, I can. Good, please send me back, you say, unconsciously gripping the arms of the chair. You do understand you will not be able to find your way back to the inner earth. Yes. And you want to do this without asking any more questions. Yes. No, wait, you say quickly, as you remember leaving too hastily when Asha asked you the same question, more or less. If I don't have the time or ability to help someone else get what I want, is there something else I can do so I won't worry? Imagine what you want and say to yourself, this or something better.